begin our journey in 1846 when the property of land that was to become Lake Compounce near Bristol, Connecticut was owned by a man named Gad Norton. One day another fellow by the name of Samuel Botsford, a local scientist in the area, asked Mr. Norton if he could conduct an experiment using electricity and a number of explosives, sounds really f***ing safe, around his lake. Mr. Norton agreed, and the stunt drew thousands of spectators, and that got the wheels spinning in Mr. Norton's head. Shortly after that, Lake Compounce opened to the general public. Originally, the park consisted of some picnic tables, some boat rowing activities, a gazebo for concerts, and a portion of the lake was open for public swimming. The following year, Norton added a hand-powered swing ride, which was to become the first official ride of Lake Compounce. 2 years after that, in 1851, a California gold miner by the name of Isaac Pierce teamed up with Mr. Norton to help continue to grow the park. Together, they formed Pierce Norton Corporation, and the park would stay within those two families for over 100 years. In 1895, a casino was added to the park. That'd be wild if parks still had casinos in them. Hey, you crazy kids go ride Boulder Dash, I'm gonna go double down on 11. Also that year, the Bristol and Plainville Tramway Company constructed the Southington and Lake Compounce trolley line. That brought in a lot more and the park's attendance grew drastically. By 1911, the park opened the Lake Compounce Carousel, which is still operating to this day and is in the U.S. National Register of Historic Places. In 1914, the park got its very first roller coaster, the Green Dragon, an out-and-back Woody. That stuck around for 8 years until 1926 when it was removed to make way for a bigger and better version. And that was Wildcat, manufactured by PTC, opened in 1927, and again, similar to the carousel, is still operating to this day. Man, this park's got some history. So we're moving and grooving and wheeling and dealing until the 1940s when the Great Depression hit with a bang. And on top of that, the end of trolley lines in general, as the automobile took over as the main form of transportation in the country. In 1943, the park added the Gillette Railway, a train ride giving guests a ride around the park's property. For the next 23 years, the Pierce Norton Corporation continued to operate the park until 1966 when Ed Pierce decided, hey, this, and he sold all his shares to the Norton family, thus making the Norton family the sole owners and operators of the park, and bringing with it an end of an era and the end of the Pierce Norton Corporation. The 1970s were a pretty quiet time in the park's history, as there was only really one significant addition, and that was in 1975 with the addition of Tornado, an indoor scrambler. 10 years later, in 1985, the Norton family decided they did not want to maintain the park any longer, and they put it up for sale. And the top bidder was Hershey Entertainment, the owners and operators of Hershey Park in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And they immediately changed the name to Hershey's Lake Compounce. The following year, in 1986, Hershey added 3 new attractions: a pair of Huss flat rides, one an Enterprise and the other a pirate ship, and an aerodynamics log flume called Sawmill Plunge. Just 2 years after their purchase of the park, Hershey Entertainment was going through a number of leadership changes. And one of the first major decisions their new CEO, J. Bruce McKinney, made was to sell Hershey's Lake Compounce. Hershey Entertainment found a buyer in Joseph Balestieri. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. That's kind of a up name, but my last name's kind of up, so I really have no room to talk. And this arrogant fella immediately formed JEG, the Joseph Entertainment Group. Now, it seems to me that this guy didn't really want to be in the theme park business. He wanted to be in more of a concert promotion type business. But he can make extra money off the rides. I don't know, just a theory of mine. So his focus was more on promoting concerts and festivals, not taking care of the amusement park side of things. And that was very evident the following year in 1988 when JEG added a 20,000-seat amphitheater. And a quick little fun story of the JEG-owned Lake Compounce Festival Park, the 1980s pop group Milli Vanilli, who were busted for lip-syncing because their tape got stuck skipping, that happened in 1989 at Lake Compounce. Should have been a sign for JEG that was about to go south. Nothing but bad things happened over the course of the next 3 years, and by 1991 the rides and the park itself were beginning to heavily deteriorate. And that became public knowledge when JEG bounced a check to one of the biggest bands of all time, Guns N' Roses. Now obviously they refused to perform at the park. Understandable. JEG was drowning in its own mess, and by 1991 they owed $900,000 in back taxes, $300,000 in ticket refunds, and eventually they said, oh, I think we done up, and filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. 1992, the park did not open at all, except on Labor Day weekend. Just the beach was open so the park could maintain its title of the oldest continuously operating theme park in the country. Now, obviously, the park was put up for sale this year, and it was in such shape, there were no buyers. There were no offers. And JEG was forced to file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy and liquidated the park. Now, the land itself and what was left of the rides and buildings was bought by somebody named Stephen Barbarino. 1993, the park was closed yet again, except for Labor Day weekend. But by the end of that year, Mr. Barbarino partnered up with Funtime Parks, a small theme park chain which operated Geauga Lake and Darien Lake and some other smaller properties at the time. And they worked out an agreement where Barbarino would continue to own the land and the park, and Funtime would manage and operate. And during the off-season, they put massive time and energy into getting everything back into shape and to make all the necessary repairs to open the following year. And they did just that, and in 1994, Lake Compounce officially reopened full-time. And that only lasted 1 year, and in 1995, Funtime merged with Premier Parks, which of course would go on to buy all the Six Flags parks. So I don't know what went on behind closed doors, but together, Premier and Mr. Barbarino decided that they didn't want the park anymore, and they put Lake Compounce up for sale yet again. So with the park's future looking very gloom and doom, a hero, a savior came from the shadows, and that was Kennywood Entertainment, who of course were the owners of Kennywood Park in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania. Side note, very first theme park I ever went to was Kennywood. But they reinvested and revitalized the park, and they really did save it, and marketed it perfectly as a mid-sized family park where you could take the fam and enjoy a leisurely, fun-filled day, which is exactly what Lake Compounce is. In the following year, 1997, they added a ton of rides. Zoomerang, a Vekoma Boomerang coaster, the Central Pacific Railway, Thunder Rapids, a Hopkins River Rapids attraction, which is probably the most misplaced ride I've ever seen in a park, though. The Trolley, a trolley ride paying homage to the old trolley line that used to come directly to the park. The Sky Ride, a chairlift attraction that would take riders to the top of Southington Mountain. A rotor, and a Huss Topspin, called Topspin. The following year, in 1998, the park got its own water park as Splash Harbor opened to the public. In 1999, we got the addition of a Sally Corp Dark Shooter in Ghost Hunt. And also that year, we saw the removal of the indoor scrambler, the Tornado. The new millennium turned out to be a highly significant time in the park's history, as we got the addition of the CCI Classic Boulder Dash, a wooden roller coaster built into the side of the mountain, winning the Golden Ticket Award multiple times for Best Wooden Roller Coaster, and making Lake Compounce a destination park for enthusiasts. 2002 saw the removal of Topspin, but 2 years later we got the addition of an S&S Turbo Tower known as Downtime. Standing 185 feet tall, you can't deny those rides pack a f***ing punch. 2006 brought on another S&S thrill ride in Thunder and Lightning, one of their screamin' swings. 2007 saw a corporate shakeup as Kennywood Entertainment decided to hang up the gloves, and they sold all their parks to Parques Reunidos. Based out of Madrid, Spain, and owning multiple European theme parks such as Bon Bon Land, Mirabilandia in Italy, Movie Park Germany, and Park Warner Madrid, just to name a few. They still own and operate the park today and have done a pretty good job of maintaining that standard that Kennywood Entertainment returned the park to. And their first addition to the park was Zoomer's Gas and Go, a Chance Rides electric car ride. 3 years later, in 2010, we saw the removal of the rotor, but the following year saw the addition of a Zamperla Disco known as a Revolution. Those are quality attractions. They hardly ever break down, and they're fun as 2012 saw the water park Splash Harbor get a minor re-theme and a new name in Crocodile Cove. Now, my personal two favorite pastimes are theme parks and camping. So you know I was on board in 2014 when they added some on-site lodging in Bear Creek Campground. 2015 saw the removal of the Enterprise as its service life was up. 2016 was a big addition as we got the Phobia Fear Coaster. It's a Premier Skyrocket 2 model and is still, as of today, the biggest financial investment the park has ever made. In terms of attractions, 2017 saw the permanent closure of the Sky Ride. The decision was made to close the attraction after an incident that happened at Great Escape in Queensbury, New York, and they decided because the ride is so remote, if someone was to fall or get stuck up there, probably not good. 2021 saw the Bear Creek Campground, that's a tongue twister, get renamed to Lake Compounce Campground. Lake Compounce is the oldest operating theme park in the United States. It's been open since 1846. with the exception of only a couple years in the early 90s, has been open every summer to provide guests of the New England area a satisfying family theme park experience. And this park's history definitely proves, when in the right hands, it's always possessed the makings for greatness.